things happen. So I want to start by everyone, please, just giving an introduction. And if we can start actually with the progression of the days. And on day one, we presented work by Meow and also by Martin. So Martin, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, nice to be here. Nice to be talking with you. I'm coming in from London at the moment, and it's the middle of the night here, so I'm feeling a bit sleepy. But it's so nice to see you all. My name's Martin O'Brien, and Jill and Oak brought me over to perform for the opening of the new space in Manhattan, which was such a thrill. I performed once at Grace in 2012 in the old space in Brooklyn, and they invited me over to do a performance for the new space. For the opening of it. My work sort of all merges out of I have cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic life-shortening disease that I was born with. So all of my work sort of thinks about what it means to be sick, to be born sick, and to be sort of approaching death at a young age, and actually lived past my life expectancy already. So all of my work really explores the politics of sickness, and it seems particularly significant at the moment, I guess, where everybody across the world is starting to think about sickness in different sorts of ways. Is that enough for an introduction, Quinn?
Yes, thank you so much. And on the third day, we had works presented by Nicola Fernoni and also Arantxa.
Thank you so much, Quinn, for having us here tonight. Jill and Hoke, thank you. Ever grateful with you too. My name is Arantxa Araujo. I'm coming from Mexico City right now. I live in New York, but I came to sort my visa, my O1 visa right now. So a lot of my work is about immigration and the politics of immigration. I've had the luck to perform at Grace in Manhattan twice. The one video that you guys presented is about femicides and the war on drugs and everything that's happening in my country, all the bloodshed. The other piece I did was about immigration, and we created a caravan that started in Grace exhibition space, and then we found a different home. We went all through the streets of Manhattan in this caravan in the middle of the night with these really beautiful light suits, and basically we presented immigrants as sources of light in our community. So that's what my work is about. Thank you, Queen.
Thank you so much, Arantxa. Each of you breaking my heart with your beautiful work. So on the fourth day, we had the pleasure of presenting GOOODW.YN and Kris Grey. GOOODW.YN, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is GOOODW.YN, formerly Nicole Goodwin. Hi, Quinn, Jill, and Hope. How are you? Basically, I had the pleasure of performing Ain't I a Woman, Dust Chronicles 2 at Grace Space, and it conquered my issues with anti-Blackness and self-image. And it was basically me pouring Aunt Jemima pancake mix on my body for 3 hours. And I never thought I could get away with it, but I was able to do that at Grace Space. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, GOOODW.YN. And Kris, you also presented, if you could introduce yourself.
My name is Kris Grey, and I met Jill and Hoke even before I lived in New York City. The first and only time that I attended Art Basel in Miami. And we connected there in what I thought was a really significant way, and I ended up in New York City. Jill and Hoke were some of the first people to present work, performance work of mine when I landed in New York. I think that was like 2012 or 2000. I think it was 2012 actually, or 2013. So I've had the pleasure of performing in both spaces now. So I performed when I first got to New York in the Brooklyn space, and I also recently performed a new piece which is concerned with the sort of history of medicalization and pathology that that shapes contemporary trans experience. And what I found is that New York, for New York, Jill and Hoke have created a platform for folks from all over the place to come together and to create work and to create magic. Really, it is the most rogue scene in New York City, and I feel really proud of them for making it, and also really excited to be connected to it. So that's me. I'm Kris Grey.
Thank you so much, Kris. And on the next day, can you believe so many wonderful days, we were able to present and feature our artist in residency, which is a relatively newer concept for Grace. And so we have our two resident artists here with us today, and we could get started with Dragonfly. If you could introduce yourself. You're muted.
All right, here we go. Hi, I'm Dragonfly, and I'm here. I find it really interesting to be in this lineage, the relationship to Grace and Linda Montano, who was actually my professor for 2 semesters at the University of Texas at Austin in the early 90s. And so it's just, it's an honor to be in this lineage of infamous weirdos anchored in New York City. It took me a while to find the space, but immediately there was a kindredness and an openness and invitation from both Jill and Hoke that has really just catalyzed my transition that I'm in now, or am succeeding in doing, which is from strong collaborator, which I've done for years with other artists, to being like the key anchor artist and with the genesis of my own projects and ideas. And so the space residency has, as you saw in the video, like I went and got a kitten. She's my studio manager. She's not that good at it, but she makes sure that I don't overwork. The key project that I have developed while being in this space is Absconded, which will be a reiterative project honoring the legacy of Ona Judge, who was enslaved by George and Martha Washington, as a way to offer her as someone to make into that we should honor and make a monument, since we're taking down and challenging the legacies of people like George Washington, like Christopher Columbus. So living statue to have those interactions. And coincidentally, I've spent quite a bit of time in the UK recently, first summer in 3 years that I didn't, but being in this space gave me the novelty that I needed. And I see you, Martin. I think we should build, you know. I think I saw you perform actually about 3 years ago at a festival in, I think, Dublin. Does that ring a bell? I saw you. Yo.
You were in Dublin. I was there, yeah.
Yes. It's, again, I just love how we're to be a member of this tribe of amazing shamanic weirdos. I got other things in the pipeline, but Absconded is the main thing that happened. So, hey, that's enough.
Thank you so much, Dragonfly. And Dee Dee, you are resident at 182 Avenue C. If you can introduce yourself and maybe we'll take a tour, see how the space is doing. You're muted at the moment.
I got it. Yeah, so I've been here since April, since lockdown. I was looking for a place to do some sculpture, and Jill said, why don't you go there because to the gallery because it's empty. And it's been so great because I've been able to be here by myself and not have other people. I could go out of my apartment and still be alone. Not that I wanted to be alone, but it's very lonely, but still. I was given this opportunity, which is really amazing. And I didn't know I'd be here this long. I thought, oh, a month, and then it came longer. And so, yeah, I've been able to really have the opportunity to develop my work, which was maybe for the first time in such a space, because I can never do this in my apartment, even a studio, because I share studio space. I could never keep anything out. And here I've been able to keep things out and build on it. It's just such a gift. It's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
What can I say? Huh?
Thank you so much, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
And our final artist to introduce, we premiered yesterday the work that you presented at Grace, and also a conversation between the two of us, Alex Romania.
Hi, I'm Alex Romania. I'm based in New York. You probably have, if you tuned in on the Grace broadcast the last 6 months, I've been running that behind the scenes. But yeah, I've presented at Grace a few times through their old space and new space and international festivals that they've sort of co-produced. And the work that we presented at the new space and on the digital platform last night was a piece performing with 25 pounds of powdered cheese. So I'll just let that be. The ridiculousness that it is.
Thank you, Alex. And I have to turn it over, of course, to Jill and Hoke for you to introduce yourselves. We've been talking about you for a little while now, but for those guests that may be getting to know you for the first time, you're currently on mute. So if you can introduce yourselves and anything else that you would like to say in this introduction.
Yeah, hi, I'm Eric Hokanson.
I'm Jill McDermid.
Yeah, and we've been running Grace Exhibition Space in Brooklyn and in Manhattan since 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the big pandemic, and now we have to do everything like this.
But at least I get to see everyone, because not being in person, it's like, at first I thought it's going to be okay, and the performances are online. And now I miss the hell out of everybody. And I really want to be together. It'll happen. In the meantime, we're meeting in this way, and I get to see everyone. It's a space for international performance art, and we have a community of people that reaches out across the globe into the universe. Dragonfly saw Martin in Dublin, like Nicole worked with Quinn in Austin. Dee Dee knows a lot of our friends. Alex Romania, we were in Mexico. Arantxa was in Mexico, and we all have friends in common. And Kris, we met in Miami, and now we're here. So this is our community. This says a lot right there, and it's beautiful, and I think it's all genuine. And I believe we do respect each other and work hard with each other, and we'll continue to respect each other. That's how I feel.
A fine mesh.
Absolutely. And this is a small collection of the hundreds of artists that have performed with Grace Space at 182 Avenue C, but also in the history of the space, you've been able to connect with so many different performers. So thank you, Jill and Hoke. And I didn't introduce myself, so I'll just do a quick little thing.
Quinn Dukes, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Quinn Dukes. I am so delighted to be here, and I'm a performance artist. I met Jill and Hoke in 2010 through a workshop with Best and Page, and that changed my life. That experience, that workshop changed my life and boosted the trajectory of performing and curating and creating performances alive, and joining Satellite Art Fair as a performance curator and becoming a board member and for Grace, and being able to help produce this fundraiser. So Thank you.
And pretty much single-handedly doing it too. So acknowledge that. And
I need help too.
Well, yes, there was a lot of help.
There was
Thank you. But
a lot of
Quinn,
help.
yeah, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you.
So I want to go back to the artist, and we're thinking about being in this virtual space, and clearly everyone here has been able to present works in some capacity in a public space. And GOOODW.YN and Dragonfly, before we got started with the live panel discussion here, you were both talking about presenting work in public, outdoors, in a different capacity than being in a gallery. Can you talk about some of the differences? GOOODW.YN, I'll start with you since you just performed yesterday. Can you talk about some of the differences between performing outside in public versus performing indoors at Gray Space for 3 hours?
Well, I have to say that the safety net was not abound when I performed outside. Unfortunately, there was a lot of misconstrued messaging between me and the audience, and in the neighborhood that I was performing in Bed-Stuy, and the cops were called 3 times and an ambulance. So I think the atmosphere for public art in New York City has definitely changed. Whereas when I was in Gray Space, I was totally secure. I knew I was reaching my audience. They were there with me for those 3 hours. And they were just abundantly loving. It was an abundantly loving space. And this is not to say that I'll give up street intervention, but loving spaces for artists that are starting out, because that was only the 2nd year that I was doing Ain't I a Woman, is absolutely necessary to the creative fervor that, fertilizes artists. So I was just like, there's no comparison to Gray Space. There's no comparison to Gray Space. It was one of the most abundantly loving places that I have performed. And I will never forget it.
That's incredible. And I'm wondering what sort of care and measures need to happen or are even possible with being able to present public works in a way that are respected, in any small inkling of a similar capacity. Dragonfly, what were some of the experiences that you had while you were presenting Absconded?
Well, I would say I come from a background of street theater and performance. I've been a member of Reverend Billy and the Stop Shopping Choir for 10 years, which is agitprop, culture jamming, direct action, all of that. And then I also, from there, evolved my character, Miss Justice Jester. Again, with no real affiliation with any kind of gallery. I've never performed really in a gallery, so that in itself is foreign to me. I've never even actually performed inside of Grace. The residency was offered to me before the pandemic happened, but nonetheless, I mean, at the same time, like, can't we say that this webinar and this conversation in itself is like a form of art, right? And the already some of the conversations and connections that are being made by this webinar. So it doesn't require brick and mortar to be art. And also really important is I did have a friend who is a martial artist, be a witness as security. I think it is important. I think it's especially important when you are, when you're Black, when you're a woman, when you're a Black woman. If you're identifiably queer or anything on top of that, you're even more vulnerable, right? But the spectacle that I created on a national holiday, and having I was really moved by how many people from my community actually came out in person to support. I expected people to watch the web stream, but it really did help having people bear witness in that way. And again, for me, because I'm used to being from these streets, I felt reinvigorated. I'm ready to do it again.
Amazing. I would imagine that performing in public is an even further extension of the endurance, the emotional endurance, not just the physical, because both you and GOOOD.YN performed long projects, and there's so much emotional turmoil that can happen when you're presenting longer pieces. And, you know, something that also comes to mind in thinking about endurance and duration and also vulnerability. Martin and Kris, both of you present durational pieces that are definitely enormously vulnerable. Kris, can you kind of share with me some of the thoughts that you have while you're performing, while you performed this piece labeled at Grace?
Sure. I mean, it's something interesting actually that's shifted between the space in Brooklyn and the space in Manhattan. The space in Brooklyn, you felt as if you were just a little bit lofted up off of the street because we were on the second floor, right? So, you know, there's accessibility issues. But nonetheless, you felt as if you were almost entering like a kind of altered universe that wasn't necessarily a part of reality, a sort of offset of reality, if you will. But the amazing opportunity that the Manhattan space offers is that the work that you're doing that is held in this kind of like abundantly loving, special place is also quite visible to the public realm. So there's not as much of a separation when you're as a performing body. There's not as much separation between what the public has access to. I mean, anyone could walk right in off the street to see your naked body, you know, bleeding and ultimately in states of extreme vulnerability, which I think if I traffic in anything, it's generosity and vulnerability. So landing at Grace Space for that particular project, which is as of now, the only time that I've performed that piece, and I'm sure that I will re-perform it, but it hasn't happened yet. So to have that, like both of those things be able to happen simultaneously almost, to be able to be in a space where you know you are cared for and that you can really like totally bear yourself. I mean, ultimately, I think like there's the sort of, you know, being nude in front of people is already a provocation. To be a trans body that is nude is another level of provocation. To be a trans body that is nude and visible to a public that doesn't even necessarily consent to seeing your nude body is another layer that I think really offers an opportunity for artists. You know, ostensibly, I suppose you could shield the performance space from the outside, but I was really excited by that opportunity. And it relates a little bit to other spaces that are near and dear to my heart, like Participant Inc.
Yeah.
That also sort of offers that exchange. One of the pieces that I performed at Grace Space early is an untitled piece with a cast of my torso from 2009. And I have also performed that piece at Participant. And that was prior to Grace Space moving to Manhattan.
Yeah.
So there is something I think particularly unique about being able to be in a kind of bubble of support, but also for there to be very little separation between street level and the performance.
Mm-hmm. Martin, what were some thoughts, if you can recall, while you were presenting your piece and enduring some very intense physical challenges that even as I was watching the video, I was having my own trouble breathing and watching you perform that work. So what were some, if you can recall, some thoughts that you were having while you were performing?
I think so. One of the things about stuff that I do, borrowing actions from BDSM, using, actions that sort of make sickness visible in different ways. So the thing you're talking about there is using something called a rebreathe HUD, which is a BDSM HUD for breath restriction. It goes over your whole head, and when you breathe out, it inflates, and when you breathe in, it sticks to your face. And you kind of see the contortion of the mouth open, trying to gasp for breath. So it's about sort of making breath visible. I'm thinking about a sort of sick and dying body and trying to make those things visible that aren't necessarily always visible. But I've got to say, one of the things that goes through my head during performance is this is quite fun, even though it looks sort of like grisly and scary for people, but actually the experience is a little bit different. Part of it is switching into a different mode where I'm just focused on the action. And also there's certain points where I just catch a glimpse of the audience and see the audience and think, actually, this is something that I really love to do, and enjoy being here with people and sharing space with people and sort of making work as a kind of gift for people, even if the gift isn't one of entertainment or joy. It's a kind of gift of sharing an experience of difficulty with someone, or kind of opening up a discussion around an experience. So it kind of looks grisly, but the moments where it's difficult, but it's also part of the politic is that I've chosen to do it. And I always think that one of the things about performance, and I always repeat this line, is that a place where I can be sick the way I want to be, and there's a place to try and claim some kind of agency over a body where you're constantly giving you have to surrender agency both to sickness and to medicine because you want to survive, so you willingly submit to it, but also sickness sort of demands your agency and removes it from you. So performance is one place where I feel like I'm kind of in control.
Absolutely. Yeah, thinking of agency and thinking also of things that feel out of control, I was reminded, Arantxa, of your piece and thinking about, bloodshed in your country and so many injustices that happen specifically within the context of Mexico. And I'm wondering, how is that something that you feel, emotionally strong enough, to have that fortitude to create performance work out of that?
I think it's important to create these spaces where we can speak about the issues that are going on, sometimes to inform, sometimes to provide alternate ways of processing. I tend to do a lot of meditative work. And in this case, I was exploring the idea of, if I have basically my body from a pendulum, and the one point that I can touch is slippery, how can I still control my body? How can I still have some sense of control, regardless of all this stimuli that's going outside? How can I maintain calm, maintain balance? After the performance that you guys presented, Martha Wilson, my boss, emailed me saying, "What was that in the bags? Was that menstrual blood?" And I said, "Yeah, it was actually 3 kinds of bloods. One was blood from my veins, one was menstrual blood, and one was what I consider to be the blood of earth. So it was beetroot juice. So it's like the 3 kinds of violence that's happening in the country. There's like young people being killed by the narco state, femicides happening 10 times every day. 1 woman gets killed just for the sake of being a woman. So also the idea of being hanged from this, my naked body being hanged from there, the visibility of just the legs and like the naked body, you know, just, and that's like the reason why people are getting killed. And then the other is how we constantly rape Earth, you know, we take resource out without even having some consciousness about it. So in that moment where you realize all the problematic, you try to have some sense of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking, of course, in thinking of Earth, Dee Dee, you've been creating so many different ecosystems within Gray Space and different methods to try to help heal the Earth and heal areas of New York City, the rivers in particular that unfortunately have been so tremendously polluted. Can you talk to us about some of the ways that you feel your work is helping to heal, particularly New York City right now? You're muted.
Yeah, my phone and my computer are both on. This got too hot and it said emergency, it's too hot. So I switched to my computer. So yeah, this is where I've been. And my project was to make mud balls per person who died of COVID. And then I ended up doing microbes to Metropolis, which is this, you know, this total pathway from starting with healing ourselves and ended up with having a very healed and empathic world at the end, where we can live lifestyles that actually help each other and create abundance, and also an economy that's fair and just. So that starts with microbes in this story that I've created. And it gives us, the people who I've been, who wander by or ask questions, or friends that come by or through, I give them, I'm hoping to give them ideas to spark their own imagination and what we can do in our lifestyles to give us the power, like the mud balls that we can just go out and clean the river if we want. We got the microbes right here. We use them in our daily life, maybe to clean our house or to ferment our food waste. So if we're living lifestyles of what I call beneficial succession, then we're healing the earth as a byproduct of just living our life. So that's the idea. Like, what can we do that would also help the world? So we have mud balls, and we have mushrooms, and we have moss and kelp, and then I always ask, who do you want to be in the world you want to see? And so that creates the plaza of people. So right now last month I created a plaza of people who did what they wanted to do in the world they wanted to see. And I brought them together in the plaza. And so this month we're asset mapping, and next month we're going to, which is October now, we're going to be doodling the future and hopefully using green screen and standing in our own drawings of what we want to see. So what are the lifestyles that we create, and how do they build symbiotically together to create a cascade of betterment through just being conscious of what we're doing and what our supply chain is and our resource flow? We can start to make it go further and further and further.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that this would be my preferred plaza of people.
Right, we're a plaza right now.
This Zoom meeting here looks like a really great group to to be with. And thinking about the plaza, because you're activating that outdoor space. Alex, of course, I'm thinking back to you concluding your performance piece in the plaza. Can you talk about the decision to begin the performance indoors and then to bridge your way outside?
Let's see. I guess I can talk a little bit about maybe the sort of involvement of like spectacle in my work, which that was definitely a choice to sort of be a public spectacle in that way. I think I started off that performance inside this this I've been calling it like a psychedelic hot dog priestess costume that is this ridiculous fabric hot dog mascot that's like got lots of sparkles and glitter and stripes of things and fur, and these kind of ridiculous wings. I think that was where I started sort of delivering this like nonsense poem, and then moved inside and got like 25 pounds of powdered cheese dumped on me while I was performing underneath it, and then sort of brought that out again. I mean, my work often sort of deals with this sort of media intersection, where I had something called Bartonella, which was very similar to Lyme disease for a few years, which I still have. But during that time, I went through this, you know, subconscious space of probably like low level insanity. But a coping mechanism that I had throughout that was sort of going deeper and deeper and deeper into the realm of like horror movies. That was kind of my own treatment for myself. I think it's just something I got addicted to, like having a chronic illness and being in bed for lots of hours. But just what with, you know, where we've been politically the last like number of years, there kind of revealed itself this like media screen connection between sort of how we're digesting news and also sort of in the realm of horror. And there's oftentimes this kind of like hyper spectacle inside of those spaces. So yeah, I don't know. Spectacle. That's kind of what I can say, I guess.
Spectacle. There's a whole society of the spectacle, right? Kind of reminds me of some of my old readings. I'm wondering if everyone that's here with us today has been able to feel creative and feel productive, and also be productive with performance projects during the past 6 months. And for those of you that are shaking your head no, I'm wondering if I can, Martin, I saw you shake your head no. I'm wondering if you can just share some of your thoughts of what's been going on the past 6 months and yourself creatively right now.
Yeah, sure. But you know, first it was really sort of strict thing that, you know, those of us with CF were told, don't go outside, stay in your house, do not leave under any circumstances, you know, and get people to shop for you. So all that kind of thing, that was for the first part. And it's different now. I can go outside, but I can't go indoors with anybody else, just in my house and outdoors. That's it. But what it sort of did for me is I did a lot of writing during the time. So I wrote an essay which I published, but it was a time of thinking, like trying to figure some things out, you know, and ideas around like what happens when we're sort of living through a pandemic and all of a sudden sickness, which is a thing that I've been thinking about and obsessing about for my whole life, becomes something different for everybody, because everybody's starting to think about sickness all of a sudden. And when I sort of surpassed my life expectancy, I kind of came up with this idea of zombie time, that I said I was transforming into a zombie and living in this time of the undead where temporality is completely different and your relationship to death is completely different. And so I wrote this essay where I said, essentially now the whole world is kind of going through a sort of zombie time. Everybody's living through this time where our relationship is this shadow temporality where our lives are completely different all of a sudden. Everybody's having to face their own mortality or the mortality of the people that are really close to them. All of a sudden somebody coughs and you think, oh my God, they're coughing my death at me, or, you know, or vice versa. I'm holding their death in my lungs somehow. So all those kinds of things to start to think about. And one of the weird things with cystic fibrosis is that when people with CF aren't allowed to be in the same room as each other, because we can pass on bugs to each other that could make each other really sick or kill one another. So already that experience that was discovered about 15 years ago. So over the last 15 years, us with cystic fibrosis haven't been able to be together, form a kind of physical community. So it really feels as though there's something really similar being mapped onto other people. Wow. Now that, you know, on a wider population of people are starting to experience this weird sort of zombie time or
Yeah.
undead time.
Is
They
there
were the things I was thinking of.
a way that our guests can review and read your essay? Is it published?
It is, yeah. It's online too. On the Wellcome Trust published it. So if you search Welcome Open, Welcome with a double L, and then Martin O'Brien, you'll be able to find the essay.
Maybe you can post a link in the chat.
Exactly, yeah. But I was supposed to do a performance. Oh, I can do that. Yeah, sure. I was supposed to do a performance in March, which of course was cancelled and postponed, and keeps getting postponed. So eventually will happen. And briefly, that was called the Last Breath Society. Coffin as in and coffin as in the thing that you're buried in. You know, the idea was it was trying to be a way of bringing sick people together. A lot of my work has been sort of about loneliness in a way of dying, but this was a thing of trying to bring together society of the sick. And then COVID happened, but now it seems even more significant in a way, at least with all these coffins and the sound of coffin coming out and a bringing together of sick people.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I remember seeing someone else shake their head no, but I couldn't tell you who it was. No one's gonna speak up. Well, then Goodwin.
I won't lie. The last this lockdown has been, I don't know. COVID has been a weird way of inspiring me. It took away so many gifts and so many just prized possessions. I was supposed to tour this year, and I wasn't able to do that. But I found reconnection in social media and performing online or for online, and addressing my fears of COVID and addressing my fears of depression and fighting it off and still fighting, and what the contingencies are of all this anxiety towards death and being in a society that all of us are in it together.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if anyone feels that they have discovered a personally fruitful method of interaction while doing performance for camera. Dragonfly, I see you shaking yes. Is there a particular way of performing in front of the screen that you've been able to negotiate with?
Well, I didn't mean the yes in terms of performing in front of a screen, to be honest, but I would say just in general, we've gained as much as we've lost in a lot of ways. Like, for instance, I too was slated to perform overseas. I was going to perform in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for the first time officially, and you know, that was taken. But the solitude that came first was a gift, because the living situation that I was in was becoming very toxic. I was a full-time Airbnb hostess. That was how I was able to afford my bohemian lifestyle and an expensive apartment in Bed-Stuy. But it diminishing returns. And so fortunately, I, for the first time, got to really just have that solitude to really reconnect with myself. And I feel like, again, with that reference about time, I appreciate what you said, Martin, because it feels like we got our time back because of COVID, but as a result, also even more hyper aware of how little time that we have. And so there's been this thing, oh, I've got all this time. Wait, I really don't have much time in the grand scheme. So it also made me be more deliberate about my relationships. If I'm going to have all of this solitude, right, then the people that I let into my inner sanctum really have to, it has to be reciprocal. It has to feed me. So let's just say that in that process, I buried a lot of people who are still breathing in order for me to have the space and the capacity to be singular and have the agency to create on my own terms. And I also found interesting ways to build community. And one of them I'll share is like a co-working session, right? 2 hours, because I can't do the cafes anymore. I mean, I just can't wait until I can just sit in a cafe and pay my toll with the cheapest drip coffee and stare into space and pretend that I'm going to work and talk to strangers and this and that, you know, like that's part of the creative process.
Yes.
It's not as much fun at home, but when I create that with co-working sessions and collaborating in that way. And I also had the advantage of working very intimately with a colleague of mine, Ebony Noel Golden, where we were in community devising work. And it was so powerful. It was a conjure. It was an experience. And it really helped revolutionize the way that I think about creating my own work, collaborating. Do you have to actually physically occupy the same space to make the art? But it's really more about the same headspace than the physical space. And when you cut out the commute, you have more capacity to create. And I'm gonna end it on that.
Drop the mic. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the loss of the time of commute and the gain, particularly for anyone that relies on public transit. It's definitely true. Hearing you talk about collaboration made me wonder if there's anyone else here that has really thrived from collaboration, whether it's collaboration in live performance. I see you shaking, a few of you shaking your head. Yes. Kris, you worked collaboratively within the piece that you presented at Grace.
I did, and I would say it's something that I tell my students all the time is that like actually nothing I do is an individual experience. Like everything that I do in every stage is a collaboration, and a lot of time and labor is foisted upon partners, lovers, and friends. So even thinking about the folks that comprise my chosen family as being the folks who run through ideas with me, who I talk things through before actually doing, who I trust in terms of feedback for work in progress. And then for the piece that we presented labeled, I worked in a very particular collaborative way with Leah James, who's an artist who I really adore and admire. She's a photographer, she does performance, she's really kind of across the board. And for the piece that I presented, it has a direct relationship with photography in that the research that I'm doing is in medical and police archives. So, you know, images of trans bodies are sort of stricken from the canonical record of American history, of world history. But our images exist. They exist in a very particular context. So I'm really drawing on this research where I'm looking for not only images, but also descriptions of trans bodies in medical and police archives. And so to partner with Leah, who has really much more extensive knowledge of piercing than I do, but who is also an incredibly skilled photographer. So the script of this performance piece, for those who are tuning in, who are unfamiliar, is that I stand in a performance space in front of a live audience, and Leah comes into that space and sews very delicate, thin porcelain labels onto my body. I think for the audience, it's not immediately evident that those objects are made in clay. I think that they read from even a slight distance as possibly paper. But then when the images or when the labels are installed on my body, there's a moment of transition between the installation and the de-installation, in essence, in which I ask for my collaborator to take photographs of my body that are in direct relationship to the photographs I'm looking at in the medical and police archives. So Leah really brought something very specific in particular, and so many skills that I was looking for, and I feel very thankful for that collaboration. And I will say that I collaborate long-term with Maya Cherokee, who's an amazing artist, who was in the room that evening for that labeled performance, and who is someone who I work with very often in the production, not only of live performance pieces, but also still images and video work. I'm constantly indebted to my community to sort of show up and to help produce things. And I am also constantly putting my labor into performing or producing other people's work. So I really think that, like, if I'm being honest, nothing I do happens on my own at all. But in relationship to the global pandemic, I was not an early adopter for moving into digital space. I sort of was like, let me pause and let me take up a position of listening, which I think is of utmost utmost importance right now, especially as someone who also takes on successive leadership positions and who is white. So I've been doing a lot of listening and reflecting for the past several months, and my collaborator Maya and I have shifted our work that we work on together called Gender Power, and sort of from a more presentational methodology to a kind of workshop methodology, in that I think we really do the most work in workshops. Like, that's where actually the change happens. People create connectivity, they sort of learn about each other, they learn about themselves and their relationship to power structures. So we have used this time to transition into digital space, and we offered our first all digital workshop for Gender Power over the summer, and we have 2 more coming up in the fall. So we offered one in July. We'll offer another as part of an exhibition I'm in at Northern Clay Center, NCC, in October, and then one through GIBNY again in November. And I have to say, the thing that's becoming evident is that there are certain aspects of the digital environment that make magic happen where it wouldn't be able to happen in real life or in the flesh, and that people come to our workshops from all over the place, from as far away as the Netherlands, Arizona, Chicago, New York City, just all over the place, Atlanta. So it's been really kind of an amazing advent for that particular collaboration to move it to the digital space.
Absolutely. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do this, I don't think. Dee Dee, I'm thinking of you and the way that your work thrives off of collaboration. And I just want to extend to our guests that are joining us either in this Zoom world or in our Facebook world that you do have the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists today. There's a Q&A feature, so you're welcome to put any questions that come to mind during this discussion. So I wanted to plug that before, and now I'll return back to you, Dee Dee, and just thinking of collaboration and the necessity of it in your work.
Yeah, it was a hard transition. I actually have my own my personal art. I don't know the difference between I guess community art and my personal art. It's all personal. It's all community. So so I do movement. It's also here, and the show is sort of an overarching character that I created. And I was just at the beach the other day for a little while, and I was, oh my gosh, she's going back into the water. I sort of read myself as a tarot card. But so I do have like my own personal work. But it was really hard to do this community building without community. But I do have a few friends here that have kind of kept me going. And even starting workshops outside was a little difficult to get people. There's some people that pass by to go to the grocery store, but not that many. I don't know where everybody went. They moved to the country, I don't know. So there are people here, and maybe they don't go to this grocery store. It really happens to be the anchor of the community if the grocery store is not like Trader Joe's. People aren't really going by very often. It's a very expensive grocery store. So people don't, I don't know, it really depends on who goes to the grocery store. Just
Oh, interesting. So the interactions that you have are reliant on who's going to get food for themselves. That's so interesting.
But I was able to, just recently I collaborated with Lois Seda Center, and a lot of my work is with Garbagia, and some of it is, which is a community show we just did, but we did it online. And so I was able to take part of this, and then also the East Village Community Coalition and Compost Garden and El Jardín Garden and La Plaza, all these different entities that I've been working with over the years are in here, and they've been coming by and participating and coming to the ceremony we had, and the other little things that I do. They come by, and it's really important for me to have them with me. I'm so glad that they're part of this.
Absolutely. And I just want to make sure that everyone indicates and gives links to your projects that are coming up or projects that you have recently performed. I know so many of you are busy bees, whether you're creating new performances, new community-based projects, writing articles and essays. So please do, panelists, make sure you are indicating ways that our guests can stay connected with you. And I just want to be mindful of time. Usually a little bit of Zoom fatigue starts to set in once you kind of hit the hour mark. And I just want to turn it back to Jill and Hoke and connect with you both, and see if there's, just kind of open up the floor. Since I've been kind of asking people a lot of questions, I want to turn it over to you and let you ask any questions that you might have.
Oh my. Well.
Do you have questions?
Thank you, Quinn, for moderating so well. Yeah.
I have thoughts.
Thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, think.
I did. As everyone's talking, I'm thinking about how important each person's work is, how everyone's saying something really important, how everyone's chosen this medium to work with, which is the body and things that are very personal, and being put in that vulnerable spot of being in front of people. Some you might know, most of them maybe you don't know. And taking the courage to do that, and we do understand that it's very vulnerable. I don't know about this crowd, I don't know, but I have found a lot of performance artists to be very shy people, which seems surprising, I think, sometimes. So it takes a lot of courage, but it also takes a lot of, why am I doing this? I don't even understand, but this is the medium that I need to communicate what I need to communicate to people right now. And we understand that, and it's important that that voice is heard, and that voice is heard in the way it wants to be heard, that the person making that piece makes the piece that they have in their vision. And that's what we try to do. And I think that's really important. And so we're there to support. And I was hearing that in the experiences of working with Grace Space. And so I try to support, Hoke supports, we work with the artist to make sure that you're getting what you need. And if it seems dangerous or it's something that will hurt the building, we'll have to kind of maybe amend it a little bit. For the most part, we try. And so with the pandemic, we moved things online. We had the program already set up. It's a really beautiful program. I think it went great. But then there was the summer, and no, I haven't been able to have the energy to make new things. I haven't been able to get past this thing, because so much of what we do is where we connect with each other. So I'm kind of feeling a little lost because we don't have this event coming up where we physically will support someone to make their vision. But we can try to do it online for sure, and we will do that. But so I think as artists ourselves, we understand how vulnerable and how hard it is. I think as presenters and people who love everyone's work, we try hard to present what we can. we'll do it again. And those are the thoughts I'm having as I'm hearing everyone talking. So.
That sounds good.
Oh, actually, sorry. I would have helped Dragonfly more. You were asking Dragonfly about her piece, and Nicole's piece, I guess we weren't there because we're up here. And I would have been there to help Dragonfly a lot more with the performance, with the day of performance, with helping with everything. So part of this pandemic is that we weren't able to do what we normally would. And I feel bad about that. I'm sorry. I try to do better.
I just put in the chat box how amazing y'all are. Do not feel bad at all. Like the fact that I am in this residency has been profoundly life-changing. There's so many other projects that are being generated from just having this freedom and not being in a place where all 6 walls were caving in. I had just spent like 3-4 months when it was just me, my id, and the pantry moms. I'm free over here.
I know, okay, but anyway, I'll be there next time to help you get to the performance, make sure you're okay. That's normal, yeah. And maybe Hope will too. Oh, those are the thoughts that I had. I didn't necessarily have questions, but all of that was coming up as everyone was speaking.
Thank you.
And mentioning participant, also, we are not the only space, but there was Panoply, there was Glass House, there is participant. There's a community of people who take care of each other. There's all the communities that Dee Dee just mentioned in the Lower East Side. So we're here to talk about Grace Space, but we don't exist without others. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Franklin Furnace.
Franklin Furnace. I mean, everybody's huge.
Okay, Kris, sorry.
I was thinking about a little something to share that I sort of didn't premeditate, but it occurs to me now. We were chatting and privately about Annie Sprinkle and Beth Stevens and all of the folks that we saw in that little intro video. Thank you for putting that together, and thanks for running that.
Thanks, Arantxa.
Yeah.
Early in my living in New York, I wanted to connect with someone who I had long idolized, Ron Athey. Do you remember this, y'all?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Oh my God. Yeah, it was during the International Performing Arts Festival, and in our apartment we had Rocio Bolivar, La Candelada de Uva, and Ron Athey, and Kris was doing a piece and was able to collaborate with the two of them. That was so beautiful.
But and it was so beautiful. It was like the universe was giving me like the penultimate live art gift, which is to say that I had no experience in piercing for performance, but I knew that Ron was staying with Jill and Hoke, and I knew that they were doing things together and that there was stuff happening in New York. And I just showed up at Grace Exhibition Space to like paint the floor.
Yeah.
You know,
awesome.
Ryan,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was in Clifford Owen's seminar at a place in Red Hook, Pioneer Works. And I was there with Ryan Hawk, and Ryan Hawk was also staying with you. And he was like, "Oh, you want to meet Ron Athey? I know where he's staying and I know where he's working. You should meet Jill and Hoke." And I was like, "I know Jill and Hoke. Like, whoa, we can make this happen." So I showed up at Grace Exhibition Space. I volunteered to paint the floor, knowing that I would, sort of like creep in and be like, pulling at the sleeve of Ron Athey. To introduce myself, and that was the beginning of an incredible exchange that we've done many times since.
Cool.
But the first time there, and in even going through that just thinking about your generosity, honestly, like really the space is generous because you two are generous, and because you lead with generosity, and you allow the rest of us to lead with our own generosity and vulnerability.
Yeah, that's important.
But the fact that like I could show up and volunteer to paint the floor and meet one of my performance art idols, who then also just was, I said, "Oh, I don't have any knowledge about this," and he was like, "Oh, I'll just do it." That
Nice.
like Ron just said, like, "Yeah, I'll pierce your chest."
I remember that you had like Ron piercing one side and Rocio piercing the other at the same time. That's what I remember. I don't know if I'm wrong.
I mean, what a trip, you know, that for me, that's like that to me is like a model of queer mentorship. It's sort of like thinking about what we need and like what's provided and what's not available. But Gray Space is one of those places, you know, where you can go, and it doesn't, I don't even think it has to do with the space. Like I think we're having an experience of it right now, where you can connect with others who are passionate, who are generous, and who are connected in ways great and small to a vast international network of folks. So just to say, what a magical moment. And certainly in many of the turns in my professional trajectory as a performance persona, Gray Space has been there. So.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that this is a wonderful time for us to conclude this magical meeting together. And I would be remiss without saying Give2Grace. Today is the final day of our fundraiser. So please do Give2Grace, Grace Space NYC on PayPal or Venmo or Act Blue. This is a very important fundraising campaign for us so that we can continue to offer space for all of these things that we've talked about today. Thank you all so much for being here. It's such a joy to see you.
Wait a second.
Thank you.
Wait. Are we saying goodbye? No. I love everybody. Don't go.
Jill and Hoke are the best. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Quinn.